The sky above the tribal valley burned orange like a dying star. Smoke rose from the center of the ritual ground, where flames danced wildly around a circular pit. Alien drums thundered like war hearts as the tribe chanted in their harsh tongue. Tied to a wooden beam above the flames was a young alien girl with silver skin and terrified eyes. Her name was Sarah, and she had already accepted that she would die tonight. The ropes cut into her arms, her skin blistering from the heat, as the fire roared beneath her feet. The tribal aliens, known as Grooktail, stomped around her in a circle, their bodies painted with ash and blood. They believed in a god of fire, a god who demanded sacrifice whenever the sky turned red. Tonight, Sarah was that sacrifice. She looked around desperately, her vision blurring from the smoke. No one would save her. No one ever escaped the fire ritual of the Grooktail. Their leader, a massive beast with bone armor on his shoulders, lifted a burning spear toward the sky. He roared something in his language, and the tribe cheered like wild animals. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, whispering to herself, "If there is any mercy in this universe, let me die quickly." The flames rose higher, licking the wooden beam, crackling like laughing demons. Her heartbeat throbbed in her ears, louder than the drums, louder than her own screaming. And then, everything stopped. Not the fire, not the heat, but the tribe. Their voices died all at once, as if something had stolen the sound from their throats. The chief froze mid-chant, his burning spear still raised toward the sky. Every alien head turned toward the entrance of the ritual ground. A shadow stood there, tall and motionless, framed by the orange firelight. A human, he walked slowly, each step calm, deliberate, fearless. No armor, no weapon drawn, just a dark coat and eyes that seemed too steady for a man alone. The tribe hissed like cornered beasts, some backing away as if his presence itself was fire. Humans were rare on this planet, almost mythical to these tribes. To them, humans were not just soldiers. They were fire demons from the War of Ash. Sarah's eyes widened, her mind racing. Why is a human here? Why alone? The human continued walking until he stood just a breath away from the fire pit. The flames lit his face, and there was no fear in his eyes, only something colder, sharper, merciless like steel. The chief snarled and pointed his spear at the human, shouting in challenge. The human did not respond. He simply raised his head and spoke with a calm voice that cut through the smoke. "Release her," he said. The tribe recoiled as if struck. No one spoke his language fluently, but they understood the tone. Command. One of the warriors stepped forward with a spear, but the chief lifted his hand, stopping him. A strange tension filled the air, thick enough to choke on. Sarah watched from above, her breath trembling. For a moment, hope flickered inside her chest, like a tiny spark. Then doubt crushed it just as fast. No one can fight 1,000 warriors. The human stepped closer, the fire reflecting in his eyes. The heat from the flames hit him, but he did not step back. Sarah could see the flames licking at the edge of his coat, yet he didn't flinch. Whispers spread through the tribe. "Firewalker, ash spirit, one who cannot burn," the chief growled, and slammed his spear into the ground. Accepting the challenge, the tribe began to circle again, not in ritual this time, but in combat hunger. Sarah's heart pounded. The human lifted his gaze to her, just once, and in that brief moment, something passed between them. Not words, not even hope, but promise. A promise that said, "You will not die here." And for the first time since the flames touched her skin, Sarah believed it. The drums stopped completely, replaced by the crackle of fire and the low growl of war beasts. The human took one final step forward, his boots entering the edge of the fire circle. The flames touched him. He did not move. The tribe gasped in terror, several stepping back in pure fear. To them, only gods could walk through flame without screaming. And that night, in a forgotten valley of ash and blood, a legend was born. The flames wrapped around the human's boots like hungry snakes. Yet he kept walking, each step steady, controlled. His coat began to blacken at the edges, but he did not flinch. He did not shield his face. He did not even blink. To the tribe, this was not courage. This was unnatural. Whispers began to rise like smoke. "Firewalker," one alien muttered in fear. "He carries the flame of the old war." Another hissed, stepping back with shaking hands. The chief bared his sharp teeth, but hesitated for the first time. In their ancient law, any being who could walk through fire without burning held the right of challenge. To refuse his passage would anger their gods. The human reached the inner ring of stones, the heat around him distorting the air like a mirage. The fire should have eaten him alive by now, but he stood there, calm, breathing slowly. Like a storm waiting to break, Sarah stared at him from above the flames, her body trembling from both pain and shock. She could feel the ropes digging deeper into her skin, but her mind focused only on him, the stranger with fire in his eyes. He looked up, meeting her gaze once more, and in that moment, she saw something she had never expected from a human. Not rage, not cruelty, but sorrow. A sorrow so deep, it felt older than the war itself. Without warning, one of the tribal warriors roared and lunged at him with a spear. The human moved, swift like lightning, his hand slicing across the air. The warrior fell before his body even hit the ground. His spear cut clean in half. Gasps erupted from the tribe, some stumbling backward, gripping their weapons, as if they were holding on to life itself. The human's voice broke through the fear like a blade slicing through smoke. "Stop," he said, his tone heavy with something more powerful than anger. It was the tone of a man who had seen too much killing. For a moment, even the fire seemed to quiet down. The chief, angered by the fear spreading through his tribe, lifted his burning spear again and pointed it at Sarah. His message was clear. One more step, and she dies. The human closed his eyes for a second, as if collecting something inside his heart. Then he stepped fully into the flames. This time there was no hesitation. He walked through the burning pit as embers burst around him, his coat igniting in patches, flames racing up his sleeves. Sarah gasped, her breath catching. But the man did not scream. Instead, he raised his burning arm and grabbed the wooden beam above her with his bare hand. Flames crawled up his skin like living fire, and still he climbed. Every alien in the circle froze in disbelief. No one had ever defied the fire like this. The human reached her, his coat smoking, his hands blistered but steady. Up close, Sarah could see the burns forming on his skin, but he acted as if pain did not belong to him. He pulled a heated blade from his belt, its edge glowing red from the fire around them. With one swing, he cut through the rope binding her wrists. The blade burned through the fibers, and they snapped with a hiss. Sarah fell forward, but he caught her, flames still crawling across his back like golden serpents. She stared at him in disbelief, her voice trembling. Why would a human? But before she could finish, a spear came flying toward them. Thrown by one of the panicking warriors, the human turned slightly, taking the spearhead across his shoulder. Blood spraying into the firelight. He didn't even look at the wound. He lifted Sarah into his arms, the fire blazing around them, as if the flames themselves bowed away from him. The tribe watched in stunned silence, their chants dying on their lips. Never in their history had anyone walked through the sacred fire and taken the sacrifice away. To them, he no longer looked like a man. He looked like the fire god they worshipped, come to life. The human stepped out of the burning circle. Sarah held tightly against his chest. His coat finally gave in and collapsed in flames behind him, falling to ash. But he kept walking, silent, unshaken, like a soldier who had already died once and no longer feared death. At the edge of the ritual grounds, he stopped, turning to face the tribe. His voice was quiet, but it rolled through the valley like thunder. "This one belongs to no fire," he said. "Not yours, not mine, not anyone's." The tribe fell silent. No one dared move. Even their chief took a step back, his burning spear lowering slowly, eyes wide with a fear he had never known. And just like that, the fire ceremony ended not in sacrifice, but in legend. The night air outside the ritual ground was cold, a sharp contrast to the inferno behind them. Sarah could still feel the heat on her skin, the smell of smoke clinging to her hair like a memory that refused to fade. The human carried her without a word, his arms firm, steady, even as blood dripped down his shoulder from the spear wound. They crossed the jagged stone ridge that overlooked the valley, the ritual fire burning like a dying sun below them. From here, she could see the tribe, frozen in place, their chants silenced, their belief shaken. The Gruktal had always believed fire chose its victims, but tonight, fire had chosen to let her go. Sarah shivered, not from cold, but from the strange feeling spreading in her chest. Hope, small and fragile like a newborn flame, she looked up at the human carrying her, his face half hidden in the flickering firelight. His eyes were focused on the path ahead, not once looking back at the burning ritual site they had just defied. Finally she whispered, her voice weak, "You saved me." He did not answer, his breathing heavy but controlled. Sarah tried again, her voice softer. "Why?" For a moment, he said nothing. Then without looking at her, he replied quietly, "Because someone should have saved her." His voice broke slightly on that last word, and then he fell silent again. Sarah felt a strange ache in her chest, not from her burns, but from something deeper. Her, she repeated in her mind. Who was she? They reached the edge of the valley, where the trees stood, like dark sentinels under the moonlight. The human crouched near a fallen log and gently set her down. Sarah winced as her feet touched the cold ground, the pain in her burned skin flaring. He noticed, and without a word, he tore a strip of cloth from his own shirt and wrapped her injured wrists. His hands moved with quiet precision, practiced, professional, like a soldier dressing a battlefield wound. Sarah watched his face as he worked, his jaw tense, eyes sharp but tired. There were scars, so many scars, running across his arms, his neck, like old maps of forgotten battles. He tied the cloth and stood again, his silhouette outlined by the moon. "Can you walk?" he asked, his voice low. Sarah tried to stand, but her legs trembled beneath her. She stumbled, and he caught her again before she fell. He didn't sigh, didn't show disappointment. He simply lifted her once more and began walking into the forest. Sarah's chest tightened. She had never seen a human like this. Not cruel, not cold, not like the soldiers who raised her village years ago. This one carried her as if she mattered. The sound of drums echoed faintly behind them, growing distant with every step. But then, a chilling howl split the night. Not human, not tribal, a hunting call, sharp and metallic. The human froze, his eyes shifting toward the sound. Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew that sound. That was not Gruktal. Before she could speak, the forest ahead lit up in flashes of blue light, like lightning tearing through the trees. A drone, sleek, silver, dripping with advanced tech, sliced through the branches above, scanning the area with a red targeting beam. Sarah's breath caught. "The enforcers," she whispered under her breath. The human narrowed his eyes, his voice a quiet command. "Hold on!" He broke into a run, fast despite his wound, weaving through the trees with trained agility. Sarah clung to him, her heart pounding as the drone scanner swept past them, melting bark where its beam touched, branches cracked above, leaves burning in sudden sparks. As the machine locked onto movement, the human jumped over a fallen tree trunk, landing in a roll, and shielding Sarah with his body. As the beam scorched the earth beside them, he raised his arm, pressing something on a wrist device she had not noticed before. A sudden pulse of EMP energy burst from it. Like a silent shockwave rippling through the air, the drone flickered mid-flight, its eyes dimming, its scanners glitching. Then it spiraled down, crashing into the trees with a hiss, its lights dying like fading embers. The forest fell silent again. Only their breaths remained, heavy and tense, echoing in the stillness. Sarah looked up at him, awe and fear mixing in her eyes. You're not a normal human, she whispered. He didn't answer, only checked the sky once more, as if expecting more machines. Then he turned to her and said, "There will be more. We have to move before dawn." She stared at him, the realization sinking like a stone in her heart. He didn't just save her from the tribe. He had just declared war on 2 worlds. And whether she wanted it or not, she was now part of it. The forest grew thicker as night wrapped itself around the trees like a cold cloak. The air smelled of damp earth and metal, and somewhere far behind them, the broken drone still hissed as its circuits cooled. The human moved without hesitation, stepping over roots and fallen branches, as if he had walked this path many times before. Sarah clung to his back, her heartbeat slowly calming. Though her mind remained a storm, they finally reached a steep hill, covered in tangled vines and cracked stone. Half hidden beneath the roots was a metallic door, rusted and nearly swallowed by nature. The human paused and scanned the area one last time, before pressing his palm to a rusted panel beside it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan like an old beast waking from a long sleep, the door opened, releasing a gust of cold air from the darkness below. A forgotten human bunker. Sarah's eyes widened as he stepped inside, the darkness swallowing them whole. He reached to the wall and flicked a switch. Dim yellow lights flickered to life down a narrow corridor. Dust floated in the stale air, and the scent of metal and old war memories filled the space. Sarah looked around as he gently set her down on an old medical bench. The room was filled with silent machines covered by sheets, faded flags of the Terran Expedition Corps, and weapons locked behind shattered glass. This place once belonged to soldiers. She realized humans had fought here, bled here, maybe even died here. He began searching the shelves with practiced hands, opening a medical kit that had long been sealed. Without a word, he cleaned her wounds properly this time, using real antiseptic instead of torn cloth and fire ash. His hands were rough, scarred from many battles, but his touch was careful, almost respectful. Sarah watched him silently, curiosity mixed with caution. Humans were known to be cold and efficient in war, yet this man treated her injuries like a promise. After bandaging her arm, he finally spoke again, breaking the heavy silence. "You need rest," he said, his voice low but steady. "You'll be safe here for now." She stared at him, then asked softly, "What do I call you?" He paused for a second, as if the answer was buried somewhere deep. "Rook," he finally said. That single word felt heavy, like a name that once meant something on a battlefield. Sarah nodded slowly. "I am Sarah," she whispered. He gave a slight nod, then turned to tend to his own wound, pressing a cloth to the bleeding cut on his shoulder. Sarah noticed his hands trembling slightly. Despite his silent composure, a strange emotion stirred in her chest. Before she realized what she was doing, she reached for his arm. "Let me," she said, quietly but firmly. Rook looked at her as if he didn't expect those words, as if he had forgotten what it felt like to be cared for. But after a long pause, he allowed it. Sarah gently cleaned his wound, her fingers brushing against old scars and fresh burns left by the fire pit. "You walked through fire." "For me?" she whispered, still unable to understand. Rook didn't look at her, his voice quiet. "I've walked through worse." "That's not what I asked," she said, meeting his eyes. He finally looked at her, his gaze sharp yet tired. Then he said only 4 words. "I saw a mother." Sarah froze. Her breath caught in her throat. He stood and walked away after saying that, as if those words were explanation enough. But in that moment, the cold bunker felt less like a hiding place, and more like the beginning of something neither of them understood. Later that night, when Sarah finally drifted into a restless sleep on a makeshift bed, Rook stood near the entrance, staring at the flickering bunker lights. He pressed his hand against an old soldier tag, hanging from his neck, a small metal plate with a name long erased by fire and time. His voice was a whisper. Only the walls could hear. "I couldn't save you, but maybe this time I won't fail." Unseen by both of them, a cracked monitor in the corner flickered to life. Lines of red text scrolled across the screen. "Unauthorized signal detected. Position logged. Enforcer units deployed. Far beyond the trees." Engines roared to life. Something was coming, hunting them both. The bunker was silent when morning came. Dust motes floated in the shafts of light, breaking through cracked vents. Sarah sat on an old metal crate, her silver eyes tracing the faded symbols on the bunker walls. They were human military emblems, now covered in rust and sand. She couldn't read the human language perfectly, but she recognized one word carved deep into the metal plate above the entrance. Eden Fire. Something about that word made her chest tighten. It felt dangerous, ancient, like a memory she didn't own, but could still feel crawling beneath her skin. Rook stood by the control panel, checking the perimeter on a half-flickering holographic map. Red dots moved slowly on the far edges, creeping closer. Enforcer signals, cold and merciless. Whoever they weren't tribal hunters. They were human machines built for one purpose: eliminate and erase. Sarah's voice broke the silence. "What is Edenfire?" Rook froze for a moment, his finger lingering over the console switch. He did not turn immediately, as if deciding whether the truth was a weapon or a burden. Then he finally spoke, his voice quiet, but edged with something heavy. Edenfire was a human experiment. He approached the wall and rested his hand against the carved word, his eyes distant. A project created in the last days of the war. Sarah listened closely, a cold chill running through her veins. "The tribes fear humans," she said slowly, "but they fear fire even more. They fear your fire." Rook nodded, his jaw tightening. "The humans who came before, they didn't come as explorers. They came as cleansers," he said, his tone bitter. "They believed that to control this planet, they must burn away all resistance, including the tribes." Sarah felt the breath leave her lungs. "So the stories, the legends of fire demons, were real." Rook finished for her. He walked past an old storage rack and pulled out a metal canister, dented but still functional. He tossed it lightly, and it landed at her feet with a hollow clank. Sarah flinched, opening it with trembling hands. Inside were rows of incendiary capsules, weaponized fire, glowing faintly in their sealed glass shells. The same flame that licked his coat when he walked through the ritual pit. The same fire the tribes called the breath of the gods. But it was not godly at all. It was manufactured. Sarah looked up at him, her voice soft but trembling. "You were one of them, weren't you?" Rook did not deny it. He simply said, "I was sent here as a soldier, trained to burn villages like the one you were taken from." Sarah's heart pounded. For a moment, fear surged through her like ice. She looked at the man who had saved her from flame, now standing just a few steps away. The same man who once carried fire as a weapon. He noticed the change in her eyes, the subtle step she took back, and something inside him seemed to break. "You want truth," he said quietly. "Here it is." He reached down and slowly unfastened the scorched plating on his arm. Underneath, his skin was burned with old branding marks. The letters were still visible. EDF-27 Eden Fire Deployment Force. Unit 27. Sarah stared at the mark, the bunker suddenly feeling much colder. "You were sent to burn us," she whispered. Rook didn't look away. "Yes," he said. "But I didn't." Silence fell like a blade. He turned away, his voice low. "I watched my squad burn a village, and I saw a mother run into the fire for her child." He paused, claws of memory digging into his voice. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just held her child and waited for the fire to take them both. Sarah felt her throat close. She didn't have to ask what happened next. She could feel it in the way his voice cracked. He dropped his rifle that day, and he never picked it up for them again. Before Sarah could speak, the console beeped sharply. A flashing warning lit the bunker screen. Multiple enforcer signals locked. "ATA, 14 minutes. Rook's eyes hardened instantly. "They found us." He grabbed one of the incendiary capsules and loaded it into a modified launcher from the shelf. Sarah looked at him, fear and determination both burning in her chest. "You're going to fight them alone." He locked the chamber with a loud click and met her eyes. "I walked away from Eden Fire once," he said. "But now Eden Fire is coming to finish what it started." Sarah stood slowly, ignoring the pain in her legs. Her voice came out steady, despite the fear beating behind her ribs. "Then you won't face it alone." Rook stared at her, surprised. For a moment, the bunker lights flickered between them, painting their shadows on the wall, like two warriors standing before a storm. Outside, the faint rumble of engines grew louder. Drawing nearer, the past was returning, not as a memory, but as an enemy, and this time, fire would not take a mother or a child, not while Rook and Sarah stood together. The sound came first, a low metallic roar rolling across the sky, like thunder made of steel. The bunker walls trembled as dust fell from the ceiling. Sarah felt it in her bones, a deep vibration that spoke of machines built to hunt. Rook stood at the entrance, eyes fixed on the horizon through a cracked viewing slit. In the distance, dark shapes cut through the clouds. Sleek, black enforcer dropships. The Bureau's personal execution fleet. Their engines glowed like burning coals, leaving trails of blue fire across the sky. Sarah's heartbeat quickened. She had seen these ships once before. The day her village was taken. Back then, she was a child hiding under a broken wall, as fire rained from the sky. And now, they had returned. Rook turned slightly, his voice calm, but his eyes held a storm. 7 dropships, 30 units, he said. Standard enforcer sweep formation. Sarah clenched her fists. "Can we outrun them?" Rook shook his head slowly. "They're not here to chase," he said quietly. "They're here to erase." He stepped toward a large metal crate and pulled it open, revealing old human tech, sealed in foam casings, incendiary cells, pulse rifles, EMP grenades, the tools of Eden Fire. Sarah watched as he loaded each weapon with precise, practiced movements. Every motion was quiet, controlled, like a man preparing not for victory, but for last duty. "You have trained for this," she said softly. Rook did not answer immediately. Then he spoke, voice low. "Eden Fire soldiers aren't trained to survive. We're trained to finish." Those words hit her harder than any weapon. He wasn't preparing to escape. He was preparing to make a stand. Outside, landing claws slammed into the earth, shaking the ground like a giant heartbeat. Metal feet hit the soil one by one, the enforcers emerging in perfect formation. Tall, armored figures, faces hidden behind glass helmets, glowing icy blue. They moved without emotion, without pause, each step in unison, each breath calculated. They were not soldiers. They were execution made of metal. A loudspeaker cracked through the air, a cold voice echoing through the trees. "Unit 27, it announced. "Surrender the alien female." Compliance will result in a clean termination. Sarah's blood ran cold. They weren't offering mercy, just a quicker death. Rook's hand tightened around the rifle grip. Sarah stepped beside him, limping slightly but standing tall. "I will not be sacrificed again," she said, her voice steady. Rook looked at her, an old fire flickering in his eyes. "No," he said. "This time, we burn them." The enforcers advanced in formation, their scanners sweeping the bunker entrance. Rook moved first, pulling a small device from his belt. He threw it into the open, and it hit the ground with a metallic click. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a pulse of white light exploded, rippling across the earth like a silent wave. The enforcers staggered back as their scanners flickered, briefly blinded by the EMP blast. Rook didn't waste a second. He charged forward, smoke swirling around him like a cloak, firing controlled bursts from his rifle. His movements were precise, deadly. Every step a memory of old training, every shot calculated. Sarah watched in awe as one man moved like a storm against machines built for war. But enforcers did not break. They adjusted, shifting into counterformation, raising their arc cannons. Blue energy crackled along their arms as they prepared to fire in unison. A blast that could vaporize the entire bunker in seconds. Rook skidded behind a broken column as a beam of raw plasma tore through the ground. The earth exploded where he stood just moments before, heat washing over him like a second sun. Sarah ducked behind the bunker wall, covering her ears as shockwaves tore through the ground. "Rook!" she shouted. He didn't answer, but she saw him move again, glowing fragments of light trailing from his path, like fragments of living fire. In that moment, she realized he wasn't avoiding the blasts. He was studying them, calculating pattern, speed, rhythm. He whispered something under his breath, a soldier's mantra. Then he stood up, fully exposed, and sprinted forward straight into the enforcer firing line. Sarah gasped, her heart nearly stopping. But instead of shooting, Rook threw his weapon aside, grabbing 2 burning incendiary capsules with his bare hands. The enforcers adjusted their aim, but they were too slow. Rook slammed the capsules against the ground. Activating them, a wall of living fire burst upward, not like a normal explosion, but like a controlled river of flame that flowed forward, bending, curving, obeying something unseen. It moved around him, never touching him, but consuming everything else. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just fire, it was Eden fire. The enforcers staggered back, their armor glowing red as heat sensors overloaded. Sarah watched as Rook walked through flames once again, the inferno parting around him like the ritual fire before. To the machines, he was a walking anomaly, a breach in logic. To the tribes, he would be a myth whispered across centuries. But to Sarah, he was the fire that chose to protect. Behind her, the bunker alarm blared. Second wave detected. Sky units inbound. More were coming. So many more. Rook stood in the glow of the burning fire line, his silhouette like that of a man who had already died once, and now only fought for one promise. He turned his head slightly towards Sarah and spoke with calm certainty. This ends tonight, and for the first time in her life, Sarah believed that fire could be freedom. The sky above the bunker glowed with streaks of blue fire as the second wave of enforcer ships broke through the clouds. Their wings cut across the night like blades, engines screaming like metal beasts unleashed. Sarah stood near the bunker entrance, her breath caught between fear and something else, something fierce. Rook stood ahead of her, flames still dancing along the battlefield, like living serpents obeying his presence. The enforcers regrouped beyond the burning line, their armor scorched, but their formation tightening. They were machines designed to adapt, to learn, to become unstoppable. A voice crackled through their transmission, echoing through the valley. "Unit 27, it said, cold and mechanical. You belong to Eden Fire. Return to command or be neutralized. Rook stood still in the firelight, his back straight, shoulders squared, like a soldier standing at his final post. He did not answer their command. Instead, he spoke to Sarah without turning. "You asked why I walked through fire," he said, his voice steady. Sarah felt her chest tighten. He continued, "It's because I am fire, but for the first time, I choose where it burns." The machines began their advance, moving like perfect shadows across the glowing sands. The air trembled, and Sarah knew this was no longer just a fight for survival. This was a fight to prove what humanity truly is. Rook raised his hand, and the flame shifted, curling around him like a cloak. The temperature around them rose. Not wild like tribal fire, but focused like a heartbeat. The enforcers opened fire. Beams of blue plasma ripping through the smoke. Rook moved through the chaos with controlled fury. Each step a memory of a war. He refused to continue. Sarah watched as he fought, not to kill, but to protect. His strikes were efficient, disabling joints, shattering visors, tearing apart weapons. He used fire like a blade, guiding it with his will. The flames did not consume everything. They only struck those who raised weapons against them. It was fire with conscience. Some of the enforcers hesitated, their machines momentarily freezing, as they tried to process something that did not match their programming. Compassion. Fire had never shown mercy before. Not in their records. Not in Eden Fire's design. And yet, here it was. Fire that shielded life instead of taking it. The commander unit stepped forward, towering above the rest. A monstrous machine twice the size of a man, its armor forged black. It raised a massive cannon, the energy inside it humming with deadly light. "Last warning," it announced. "Unit 27, comply." Rook slowly lifted his head, his voice low but unshaken. "I am not Unit 27. He spread his arms, and fire arched upward like wings behind him. "My name is Rook Hale," he said, "and I burn for them, not for you." The cannon charged, a blinding vortex of blue fire gathering at its core. Sarah stepped forward, despite her wounds, her voice breaking the air. "Rook!" But he did not look back. Instead, he whispered something under his breath. A farewell, not of defeat, but acceptance. This is where the fire ends. He triggered the last two incendiary cores, strapped to his chest. But instead of exploding outward, the fire spiraled inward, pulling the plasma blast into itself. A vortex of pure light erupted, not chaotic like an explosion, but controlled like a heartbeat, finally finding peace. The blast bent around him, twisting like a serpent obeying its master. When the light faded, the commander's cannon lay melted, its core extinguished. The machines stopped. Their scanners flickered, recalibrating, unable to process what had just happened. A human, made of fire, had commanded plasma to kneel. Not through code, not through fear, but through will. Rook turned slowly towards Sarah, his body scorched, his breath heavy. The last of the flames flickered around his boots like fading embers. He staggered slightly, and Sarah rushed to him. Catching his arm, his skin was burned, his pulse unsteady, but his eyes were at peace. Behind them, the enforcers lowered their weapons, their systems struggling to calculate new protocol. For the first time, the machines registered something foreign in their neural log. Not resistance, recognition. Rook Hale, fire that chooses, was no longer flagged as a target. He had rewritten his own designation in their code. Sarah held him as he sank to one knee, his burned hand gripping hers tightly. "You stopped them," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. Rook gave a faint smile. "No," he said, his voice soft. "You did. You made me choose fire for something worth burning for." Above them, the morning sun broke through the clouds. Lighting the bunker ruins with golden light, the fire around them finally died, leaving only warm smoke rising gently into the sky. The enforcers turned away one by one, their metal forms fading into the horizon. They did not take the girl. They did not finish Eden Fire's command, because in that moment, even fire had learned to kneel, to love.